Hello and welcome to Photron's webinar in conjunction with Blink Technologies, our distributor based out of Australia. My name is Shane Kirksey and I'm an application engineer for Photron USA based in San Diego. Today we're going to cover our Photron FASTCAM analysis software, also known as PFA. I'm going to show you how to import videos into the software, how to set up and track up to 5 points at one time, and then how to export that data in CSV file or a project file. Please hold all questions to the end. Let's get started. Alright, so here we are in PFV, the Photron FASTCAM Viewer. Most of you are probably familiar with this. This is the viewer that we use to control the cameras, save data from the cameras, and also open files. So I don't have a camera hooked up right now because we're going to focus on PFA, but let's go ahead and open up a file. So let's select open file on the right hand side, and here's the sample file we're going to use today. Now this is obviously going to be a good image to track. We got some good fiducials here. We know that there's going to be movement. I'll just play it back for you. So it's just a short clip of this sled test. We're going to track some of these points as they move along. Now, one reason you may want to open up the image in PFV first is to increase the brightness, contrast, just to do some post-processing. If your image is a little bit flat, so if you don't have much contrast between whatever it is you're wanting to track and the background, then you can go in here and you can adjust your brightness, your contrast, your gamma. You can do some things to really bring out whatever it is that you're wanting to track. If you wanted to do that, you could, and then just resave that manipulated video, and then you'd run your analysis on that. But this image is quite good, so we're not going to make any changes to it. Now, there's two ways to get into your PFA software. I'm going to show you both ways now. So the one way that is quite easy is open up in PFV, and then you just click your analysis button here, and it's going to open up the separate PFA software. It's not really a plug-in, it's a separate software, but it'll open the software through PFV. And now you see we have the same video in our PFA software as we did in PFV. And at this point you would go in, you would start setting your trackers, and you'd run your analysis. But first, I'm going to show you the other way, which is to go directly to PFA. So close this down, and you look over here on the right hand side, I've got my PFA icon. Double click on that and click on open file. And now we've bypassed PFV, we've opened up the image file directly into PFA. Real quick, so you see there's a lot of things going on the image here. So you've got your image, you got your graph data, you've got your playback controls, and down here in this open space will be the individual trackers once we select them. If you've got maybe a laptop screen that's small, you can kind of start to get crowded, but the good thing about this is you can undock these, and if you had a separate screen, which I do, you could take these off your screen onto another screen and give you more area for maybe your graph. Maybe you wanted to put your graphs on a completely separate screen and have it displayed nice and big. You can do that, but for this recording we're just going to leave it as it is. Alright, so now we've imported the video into PFA. The next thing we're going to do is start to set our trackers. Now, if this is your first time using PFA, there's a guide over here on the right hand side. When we develop the software, we put this step-by-step guide, and it's going to walk you through setting your trackers, setting your scale, setting your coordinate system, and even it's going to tell you when to hit start and run your analysis. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to go over here to the top left, and we're going to do this all on our own. So a few things. There's you can select whether you want to fit the image to the screen. If you want to go to 100%, which is 1 pixel of the image sensor is going to be represented by 1 pixel of the monitor, and that's generally what I like to do because you're going to get a more crisp image. You're not going to get too much pixelation. You're not going to get any pixelation. So now we've got a good image of our fiducials here, and now we want to set our tracker. So hit this set tracker button. And you see here we have two types of trackers. We have a template tracker and a center of mass tracker. Let me tell you the difference between those two. A template tracker is doing just that. Whatever you select as the template, from frame to frame, it's going to look for that template and it's going to track that template, which is really good for things like these fiducials. Say maybe you just took a black Sharpie and marked on a white background or a white object that's going to be moving. That would be great. There's good contrast, and it's not going to change very much at all. One thing that template tracker doesn't do very well is track rotating objects. So if these fiducials were rotating, the template would change. So the black would not be on the left side of the yellow anymore. It might rotate to the right side, and that could confuse a template tracker. In that case, you would want to use something like our center of mass tracker. For example, a center of mass tracker, if we select this hole in the chassis here. So now I'm going to zoom into that so you can see. So if you look at this hole on the chassis, behind it there's some wires and cables and things, and that's going to move as the sled starts to move. So the template would change, so a template tracker probably would get confused on that. So if we use if we use the center of mass tracker, it's going to focus on the center of this entire object and not necessarily the template itself. So we'll select that. We'll set the threshold so that it's focusing on the contrast between the white chassis and the dark area behind this hole in the chassis. Alright, so that's our first tracker. We see down here in the bottom a kind of a zoomed window pops up, and you can adjust your threshold there. You can adjust your box around your tracker. You can delete it, you can name it what you want. You can zoom in if you needed to make sure you were centered on something. And so there's our first tracker. Alright, so our next tracker, we will use a template tracker. So these fiducials here are very good. We know that unless something goes seriously wrong with this test, that this isn't going to rotate. We'll just make sure it's centered here. There we go. Alright, there's our second tracker. And let's go ahead and just select a few more. Select this on his head. Alright, there we go. There's our 5 trackers. We've got 1 center of mass and 4 template trackers. The next thing we want to do is set up a scale. Now, you don't have to set up a scale, but if you don't, all your data is going to be based off of pixels and not actual distance. So it's always good to know the size of something in the image. And I don't really know the size of anything in the image, but we're going to just assume that this Photron sticker is 30 centimeters. One thing to remember about scale is that because it's only a 2D tracker, anything that is closer to or farther away from the camera is not going to have an accurate measurement. Only the things on this image plane where we scale is going to be accurate. So if we look at our image, these fiducials, the chassis, it's all pretty much in the image plane, so I'm going to be happy with that. Alright, so there's our scale. Now we're going to set up our coordinate system. So there's two types of coordinate systems, a static coordinate system and a dynamic coordinate system. A static is just that. You set your x and your y and it doesn't move. Everything is based off of that static position of your origin point and your destination point, as we call it. So I'll show you how that works. This is going to be our static coordinate system. So I'm going to go ahead and set my x-axis along the movement of the sled, the direction the sled is going to move. So all of my measurements are going to be based off of that. So from this origin point, destination point, x-axis is horizontal, y-axis is vertical. Alright, so let's set up our dynamic coordinate system. So a dynamic coordinate system is going to be locked to 2 points, your origin point and your direction point or destination point. And these are going to act just like any other tracker, so you need to make sure that you set them up accordingly. You want to make sure that your template is good so it doesn't lose track. And there we go. Alright, we can overlay a grid, and the grid is going to be based off this dynamic coordinate system, or the static one if you chose that. And we'll see that as we run the video and these points move, your grid system, your X and Y, is going to move with it. So now we've set up our trackers, we've set up our scale, we've set up our coordinate system. Now we're just going to go down here to the start button and we're going to hit start and we're going to run the analysis. Now depending on your computer, this may take just a few seconds or it may take a few minutes. Alright, so there we go. So we have tracked these 5 points and now we can play it back. And we can watch the trackers. We can see that they stayed on point very nicely, except for this one. We see here point number 2, there at the very end it lost its track, and the reason that is because this guy's head hit the airbag and the airbag changed the template. It changed what that fiducial looked like. And this is actually a good thing because I want us to be able to see how you can fix that, because this is always going to happen. Now you wouldn't want to do this with thousands of images, but in this case you just got a couple of images where you're going to have some spurious data that you don't want. So what you would do is you would go back to the point where it is properly tracked. There we go. And now if you hover over the point, you have this button that says complete. So all you do is click on that and you're just saying no, this isn't complete. We're going to do some manual tracking here. So now let's step it forward. Now we're just going to move this back to the center. So now you can have good data. You're not going to have to worry about deleting that last few frames. Alright, so now we can play it back again. Very good. And we can see our grid system is changing with that X and Y dynamic coordinate system changing. And that's very good. So now we can see our data here. And we're going to get displayed data for displacement, velocity, and acceleration. And you can change how your data is displayed. You can zoom in to a particular area of interest. You can see your X component and your Y component, absolute values. And as you hover over an individual point, it's going to give you the time and the value. And if there's too much data, you can always select just 1 or 2 or however many points that you want to display. And again, if you wanted to pull this data out, you can full screen it and you can play that back and just look at the data if you wanted to. And you can separate the different tabs as well. I'll just put that back where it goes. Alright, so now the next step is to export this. You select export. Let's put this somewhere where we can find it. And save it. Okay, so now let's go take a look at this. Alright, so here we go. So here is all of your data for your 5 points, more than most people want to look at, but there it is. And then here's an AVI video of the PFA actually running on your program, or running on your video. Alright, now there's one more thing we can do. You see here next to export results, we can save a project. And what this is going to do is going to save your original image. And when you click on this project file, you see here it says sample.pfa proj. It's going to open it up just like you originally did. You're going to have your original video, your trackers are already going to be selected, your data is going to be there, but you're still going to have the opportunity to manipulate your data. Say maybe you want to change your coordinate system, or maybe you want to change your scale. You could do that. So let's save the project file here. Alright, let's go open that up. So we're just going to close this down completely now. Alright, so now let's open PFA up again. And now we see here we've got this project file we can open. And here we are. We're back to our original data, original points. And now you can go through and say, for instance, this time you wanted to, so say this time you wanted to set up a static coordinate system. And now everything is going to be based off of this static coordinate system. And the nice thing about it is you can get your data to adjust just by adjusting your coordinate system. So now I've got my displacement with my x and y axes this way. If I want to change it here, let's just say we wanted to change it in this direction, and now our displacement has changed. So there's a lot of different data, different ways that you can manipulate this even after the fact. The project file is a pretty nice feature. If any of the questions get very advanced, what I'll ask you to do is just to shoot me an email. My contact information will be on the screen at the end of the webinar. And if anyone's got any questions, I will take them now.